Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Previously, we got through another one of those jury... God, what was the frickin' is it called? It's in one ear, out the other with that. I just can't remember what it's called. Large words are scary. Anyway, we got through that, but in the process... we implicated Dr. Courtney Scythe, the Scotland Yard's darling coroner, and while the the court is in recess, we're taking 5, catching up with Hairbrain and the rest. So, let's get to it. The knight errant himself. Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask, what on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What's this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Who even is he? Of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies! Ha 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 ha! As it turns out, Lord Van Zieks is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realized, isn't he? Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dock. And now a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man. You make it sound deliberate. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Oh yes? In what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Drebber, Dr. Scythe, and Lord Van Zieks. It seems that everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow. Yes, in fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone with no intersection to any other. Excuse me? Who? Oh, hello. Dr. Scythe. Dr. Courtney Scythe. Nay, Stevens. Nay? Nay. How the frick? Good day to you. Hello, Sholmes. That was very shrewd of you. What in particular, pray? You requested that 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me. Oh, well, okay. To think it's been 10 years. 10 years in the laboratory wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. A policeman on the jury had a lot to say about you as it happens, Dr. Scythe. And I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Stronhart has forbidden it. Lord Stronhart? The Pandora's box you were just warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. But attempting to hide from the truth,
That's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. I have no regrets, none at all. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. She mentioned it too. This Pandora's box. Whatever does it all mean? There's really no cause for concern. I assure you, when the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent, whether you'd like it or not. Huh? Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits. I think maybe you're enjoying yourself a little too much. Ah, yes, one word of a warning before I go. If in the course of the trial this afternoon you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. All right, I understand. Thank you. Good. I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on that as you gnaw away at the truth. But his name's on the brand. What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. So Strongheart doesn't like the idea of Scythe talking, huh? It's time for the final chapter then. I'm determined to find the truth, no matter what. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue? The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready. As the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. This trial has certainly defied all expectation. As seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord. So then, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zeeks. My lord. Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Two-Spells? Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak and ready to be summoned. Very well. Bring in the witness. At once, my lord. Bailiff, show Madame Two-Spells to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is. It means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Scythe. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present it's all we have to go on. Huh. State your name and occupation for the court, please. Yeah, I think that's Sholmes. Neat. My name is Madame Esmeralda Two-Spells. I'm a waxwork artisan, and the proprietress of the Madame Two-Spells Museum of Waxwork. You will have to pardon me for working as I testify,
My new exhibit must open very soon.
Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are 2 of them in the world.
Oh my, what expression is she carving onto that face?
A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this?
Oui, that is true. At first, we believed it had been kidnapped.
A waxwork model? Kidnapped?
Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit. However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason. I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim.
At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Odie Asman.
But of course, I know him well. He is a part of my Odious Personages exhibit.
Oh, okay. Odious, yeah.
I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all.
Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar.
Are you suggesting that we should see now the demasked visage of the professor?
Oh!
I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock.
This is absurd.
Pardon?
I don't know what face you've carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask, but clearly it won't be that of the actual killer. Indeed. The man's identity was never made public, after all. The trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that a repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information.
Quell damage. It would seem you are unaware of the 2 spells' principles.
What principles?
The family 2 spells has always prided itself on sculpting its models a la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Et voilà our principles. There is a well-known legend about the 2 spells waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. A member of the 2 spells family is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. I believe the queen's face was carved in the minutes following her death, actually at the guillotine site. You are correct. The model is on display still today in the House of Horrors. We 2 spells will stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects.
Dear me, a somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose.
It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations.
Do you mean to say that beneath that mask?
Oui, the true visage of the killer is there.
This is ludicrous. It's out of the question.
The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Two-Spell special exhibit remains extremely popular even today. The killer emerging from his own grave. It is a sight to behold. You should come.
I think, Madame, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on this matter. You will explain every detail of this macabre model and your personal involvement in its creation.
With pleasure. This'll be good.
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with Two Spells family principles. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered.
Wow! The gravedigger? The man sanctioned this.
I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family is celebrated for. Nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did it do, huh?
So you truly saw it. The face of that monster.
Naturally, I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret. But Two Spells would not be Two Spells if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculptures.
I don't believe this. I myself have seen that special exhibit at your museum, madame. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave.
The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time.
Ooh.
Huh. Son of a... What? The artist who drew this is Asmund. The signature, it's the same as on the contract. What the fuck?
Okay. Oh, I actually kind of want to read this newspaper. Anne rises from the grave. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. At Lowgate Cemetery, just behind the prison, on the night of that foul demon's execution, the newly interred professor forced off his grave cover as he clawed free of the earth. The young man who witnessed the scene was on the verge of raising a shriek when, in the next second, a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled. The youth then finally released the scream he had been holding and ran for his life. The university student who experienced the shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms. Mad sheep rampage! Unexplained phenomenon. Grips, Oxfordshire region. Locals reported a most remarkable circumstance in which folded sheep were seized with a sudden fright and leapt from field and pens. Not even Charles Darwin to receive Copley Medal? This year's recipient of the Royal Society's most prestigious award is Mr. Charles Darwin for his highly important contributions and researches in the field of geology, zoology, and botanical physiology. Mr. Darwin joins the ranks of such monumental figures as Leon Foucault, The Great Stink. Parliament is to finally address the outhouse? Wait. After a great many years, Parliament has, at long last, resolved to relieve the citizens of London of the horrifying stench that carries on the slightest breeze and lingers in the coils of every man, woman, and child. A great sewer to be built underfoot that will divert fecal away from the river. Oh, no. Was the bal mask to blame for the Great Blaze? The fire that engulfed the popular theater continues to draw attention as reports that Her Majesty Queen Victoria herself visited the Royal Italian Opera to inspect the site and offer words of condolences to the theater's owner, Mr. Frederick Guy. The theater had been under lease to famed magician John Henry Anderson, and there is some speculation that the blame for the fire lies squarely with him for the insistence on holding his bal mask there. Could his magical tricks have played a trick on him, costing the city a great center for the arts? Oh, and Krakatoa eruption. Oh man, that story though, I wonder if that's a reference to the Victoria Hall Theater. Oh man, I read a story about the Victoria Hall Theater that just, oh man, it hit me. Oh wow, okay, so this occurred around the time that this game is set in, actually. There were these two magicians, I forget their name, who performed for a theater of over 1,000 children and their parents. And at the end of their performance, the magicians on stage started handing out toys and treats and candies and all that. And so this theater, it was multi-level. And on the upper floor, you had these hundreds of children suddenly bolt from their seats because, like, they were afraid that they were afraid. Okay, well, you know what? I might have second thoughts about sharing this story. It's kind of distressing. You can look it up yourself. But anyway, it's the Victoria Hall disaster. Just it shouldn't be hard to find if you want to look it up, but just be a bit conscientious and about reading it. Anyway, it was the most detailed account of what happened, as reported by the eyewitness who saw it. The 10-year-old article has been entered into the court record. It occurs to me I probably could have read all that without the text box in the way earlier. Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. Hold on. Yeah, I could have just read it. Asman. The public enjoy absurdity, monsieur. That is why I have reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from that exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident at the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? That is correct. The professor you see before you here.
Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination.
This waxwork links Drebber to Dr. Scythe, and there has to be some reason for that which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Scythe and Drebber were in on this crime together. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London.
Hold it!
And that rumor would be a 10-year-old tale now, but one that no Londoner would ever forget.
Right. I know just what you're talking about, I think.
Of course, it could be anything else. Yes, that story will never disappear. The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead, that is the central attraction of my House of Horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this.
It was in Lowgate Cemetery behind the prison in the dead of night after the execution of the killer. The interred professor slid back the stone slab covering his tomb and emerged from his grave. A young man who witnessed this felt a scream welling up inside him, but an instant later he heard an ear-splitting gunshot from over his shoulder. The bullet struck the emerging corpse, and he fell motionless once more. The scream finally found its way from the mouth of the young witness, who turned and ran for his life. The corpse climbed out of his own grave. And then somebody shot him. Who? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor, perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. The good people of London, they love stories like this. That is why it was in every newspaper across the capital.
But was it just a story? I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today at your museum, isn't it?
Oui, the special exhibit was modeled on that very illustration. For a while afterwards, the contents of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Madame, might I say something? Please, go ahead, mademoiselle. When something is described as a rumor, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely made up. I believe that often, rumors contain elements of the truth. Ah, I see that people from the East can be just as astute as the people of Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? It is not possible for the dead to come back to life.
Sorry?
10 years ago, I was there in Lowgate Cemetery, after the criminal known as the professor was killed by hanging. I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interred. So I can assure you, the man was dead.
I see. It would certainly appear that the condemned man suffered the intended fate. Like, did someone swap the bodies back then, too?
An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with Two Spell's family principles.
Hold it!
Is that true of every waxwork in your museum, then?
It is. Assuming the subject is dead, of course, live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know.
What sort of letters?
When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Come, ka.
Kaka. No.
My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor, and for some criminals a symbol of status even.
Because nothing says hardened criminals better than wax.
And it is thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the professor.
Whose form you claim to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse.
There are no exceptions to the principles of Two Spells. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head of the cemetery just before the interment. For the head in the cemetery just before the interment.
Hold it!
Surely that's illegal, isn't it? I wonder if the statute of limitations is a thing by now. It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed.
It had nothing to do with the money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'etre of the Two Spells Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the professor. Do you realize what you're saying? The professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now that the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close. Of course it will, as will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madame. That could be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think, don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse. Oui, exactement. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night.
Hold it!
You were there longer than you expected to be. I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently, his chin would not align itself correctly. Wait, I'm sorry, I thought rigor mortis meant things stiffen. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night I was alone, and as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time. What do you mean? When I take the impression of the visage of a cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after death. Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant? It is because of a rigor mortis.
Oh, well, I guess they harden up and then loose up.
A Wriggly Mortis? It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And then, from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered.
Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one.
As the mademoiselle says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw.
I see. So that's why you wait.
Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work.
Ugh, it's getting hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses.
I wonder about that information the courts just heard from Madame Two Spells.
Yeah, I think it's important. Something doesn't add up here. The body should have just freshly been killed. Shot as it rose from the grave. Something doesn't add up here. The information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see.
Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave.
This is no time for jokes, Miss Usato. Madame, kindly amend your testimony as discussed.
Bien, sir. It took me a very long time because it was before the onset of rigor mortis.
Hold it!
Rigor mortis being the phenomenon you described whereby the corpse becomes stiff after death. I think you said that it starts at the jaw about 3 hours post-death. Is that right?
Oui, siesta. Of course the exact duration depends a little on the season.
I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed on the subject.
None. That is only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine.
Well, I had no idea about it, but maybe I won't admit to my ignorance about forensic science.
I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you like.
I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them.
Oh dear, I'll do my very best. As dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered.
Hold it!
You say that dawn was approaching? What was the time of day then, approximately?
Well, I could not say, but when I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible.
The execution took place on the 17th of June, which had the earliest sunrise of that year. Indeed it did. First light would have been at around 4:40 in the morning. That really is early.
The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in half-hour. It was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry.
Is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now, too? You certainly appear to go to extraordinary lengths for your work, madame. I wonder, is what she just said particularly significant? Yes? Madame, those details about how long it took you to complete the sculpture in the early sunrise, could you include them in your testimony? I believe they may be significant.
Of course, if you would like me to. You're quite right, Mr. Naruhodo. It is intriguing. A sunrise at 4 in the morning would be absolutely unimaginable at home, wouldn't it?
That's not quite what I meant by significant. Kindly amend your formal testimony then, madame.
With pleasure, my lord. I hurried to finish my work in the half hour before sunrise. Then I left as soon as the corpse was interred.
Hold it!
Did you have reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something?
I had paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area.
Couldn't you have just paid off the warden too?
I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret, huh?
The sunrise was at 4:40 a.m. that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting work.
Oui, that must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding.
So that's all I have to go on.
What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo?
For some reason, Dr. Scythe went along with Drebber's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the professor is the only other thing we know of that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow.
In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the jurors are sure to revert their leanings, and the trial will be over.
I agree, but interestingly, uncovering what the professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting anyway.
Yes, as do I.
After all, he has a profound connection to the professor as well. Alright. So you began work at 4, and by then rigor mortis had set in. So that means the execution must have taken place at or around 1 a.m. in the morning? So if I look at the autopsy, death by hanging confirmed at midnight. Oh. And you know what? No, that actually does line up, I think. Oh, wait. Before the onset of rigor mortis? Before? Okay, just to confirm, that happens at 3 hours after the body dies? Stiff after death? 3 hours post-death, is that right? The exact duration depends a little on the season. Okay, I think I have something here. You got to the body 4 hours after death. But you say this happened before rigor mortis, which happens 3 hours after death? No, this doesn't make sense to me.
Objection!
Madame Two Spells, I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows.
And is that a problem?
I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another.
Koi?
Koi? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? According to her testimony, Madame Two Spells was creating her waxwork impression just before dawn, and at that time, rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, Madame?
You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he cannot have been dead for a long time.
But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Scythe's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No. If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have set in.
Oui, yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff.
In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible. Ordar? Ordar. Counsel, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Scythe,
But you also implicate members of staff at Barclay Prison where the execution took place.
By heck, extraordinary! Not in my day! My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did, of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hands. Yes, the professor died that night, but what if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night.
Counsel, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened on the night of the professor's execution.
Well, he rose from the grave. Drebber bore witness, and Asmin illustrated it.
Take that!
What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor published by the gutter press. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened.
My word, yes indeed.
My wee, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up.
And in any case, this was 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him.
Objection!
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well. What?
Are you suggesting, counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place?
Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say that he's right here before my very eyes.
You will substantiate your latest claim now then, counsel. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?
None other than Enoch Drebber.
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber. Drebber?
The previous witness?
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, a young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Ordar? Ordar! Ordar! Surely not, counsel.
Drebber was there, in Lowgate Cemetery. What is all this talk about Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Tuspels doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, Madame. To your situation as well, in fact. What situation? The theft of the Professor Waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. None. But that would mean... Madame Two Spells, it would appear you know the name Enoch Drebber.
Oui, yes, I know it, but from long ago in the past.
What?
Oh my!
Good gracious! Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know.
Yes, of course.
Ah.
The story of the young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper. The Daily Circus. It is the paper from which comes the article I have already shown the court.
You're saying that his full name was only published in that article? Goodness me! Yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms.
Unbelievable. When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my house of horrors, whether it was the truth or not.
I see. So you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt a waxwork of the man, did you not?
Exactament. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork, and since that time it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery.
Well, there you have it. I think I actually guessed that he was paid money because he might have been poor at the time. Wow. So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he'd witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote that was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today. Even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and its face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Asman, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated, Dr. Scythe, would have noticed him immediately. And yet she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor. Is that what you're saying? Dr. Scythe put her name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. Wow. Actually, that's a lot to take in. I want to read that again. The birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Asman, but the same waxwork. Scythe would have noticed immediately, and yet she submitted his autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Huh. Hell. My lord, this court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Jubber are connected.
But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case?
She told us so herself, didn't she? Lord Van Zieks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it.
Lord Strongheart?
The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago, and surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped.
Ooh. But Lord Van Zieks, the missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office.
Objection!
The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes. Let Enoch Jubber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together.
Ooh, well, this is getting spicy. Ordar, ordar, ordar. Very well, I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect, addressed to Dr. Scythe of the Forensic Investigation Team. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders.
All right then, Enoch Jubber and Dr. Scythe. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away, I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Well, that makes for an excellent place to end this video. Have I heard this theme music before? I don't think I have. Or, no? Well, I like it. It's a neat song. Oh boy. So Strongheart is not going to like this. No, sir. I mean, if he's particularly petty or vengeful, he'd might do bad things to Ryunosuke, like taking away his license again. But hey, that is a problem for a future Ryunosuke. In the meantime, let's find the truth. Find that shadow of doubt and chase it like a dog with a bone. Oh boy. You know, Sholmes was so very terrified of anything remotely concerning the subject being broached. But now that Ryunosuke is actually starting to uncover the truth, Sholmes is rooting for him. Like, I mean, I never figured Sholmes was keeping the secret out of any personal benefit. It always read more to me like out of fear. Fear of some consequence of the truth being sought after, but if Sholmes sees a way that someone else could take the fall, maybe that's okay with him. Oh man, but the drawing, this is drawn and illustrated by Odie Asman. It's the same signature as on the contract. It is. Oh, it's gonna be so satisfying to whip this out at the right moment. Ooh. But I guess maybe we'll do that next time. Or, no, I could see it being one of the final things we do. So maybe next video. Well, I mean, the next video after the next one. 2 videos from now. You know. Oh, boy. Well. Oh, I was just about to say, the blood stain on the camera from the waxwork model. Oh, I get it. The gravedigger. I know why he was grave digging. Anak Drebber. A poor student desperate for money. Wanted a get-rich-quick scheme. If he could dig up that infamous killer and photograph the person's face, he could sell it to the papers for money. That's why he went to the papers with his story anyway. He was desperate for money. He wanted a story to sell, so he had to get what he could scrap together after the gunshot. Yeah. So he went to the body, it rose from the grave, and someone shot it and killed it. Well, him, I should say. I shouldn't refer to people as it's. That's just not good, no matter who you're talking about. I wonder if the photograph captured anything. If some accidental photo was taken, but... Yeah, Drebber's initial plan of taking a photo of the corpse's face backfired, and... Well, not backfired really, but it went wrong, and the corpse rose from the grave. Someone shot it and killed it. Him? Oh my god. I'm sorry. When my brain gets like this, I'm just focusing so hard on this. And Drebber ran in fear. And presumably sometime after... Two Spells looked at the body herself? Wait, so... Whoever shot the body... Didn't... Wait... What about... Wait... When was the signal given by the gravedigger, by Drebber, that it was okay to come look at the body and sculpt the wax? When did that happen? That confuses me a little, but maybe I'm just dumb. Regardless, we'll find out the truth next time. Well, more of the truth, maybe. In the meantime, I'm Zephyr the Jester. This has been more of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you next time. So until then, please take care.